Thumbs up.
All right, I'm going to call the Planning Board and Zoning Commission meeting for February 11th, 2026 to order. Can I have a roll call, please? Greg?
Robert?
Here.
Gray?
Yep.
Tupin? Eccles Bell?
Here.
Boise?
Yes.
Conley?
Here.
DiBenedetto?
Here. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for January 28th, 2026?
I move. I second.
Is there any discussions, corrections, or changes?
I thought they looked pretty good.
Okay, can I have call for the vote, please, Greg?
Robert?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Eccles Bell?
Yes.
Boise?
Yes.
Conley?
Yes.
DiBenedetto?
Yes. All right, communication from board and council, Urban Renewal Agency, do you want to report on that?
Sure. We met on Monday, and I think the most substantial thing from our meeting was we got an update from Angela Getchall regarding the CDBG-funded housing assessment that is being done by EPS, which stands for Economic and Planning Systems. And just she kind of went over some of what they're studying and, demographics, housing cost, housing supply, housing demands, draft findings, et cetera, of their study. And she also notified us of a meeting tomorrow from 1 to 2 at the Red Lodge Area Community Foundation. That will be an update. And there's several stakeholders that have been named. A couple were Jeremy Battles, Brian Hanna, Marcel Emanuel, and there were several more, which I have to go back and watch the video to catch all the names. But so this is going to be the first meeting with all the stakeholders and the contractor, pretty much talking about housing and basically updating the last study, which was done, I think, in 2022. So it's been a while.
What time was that meeting? I'm sorry.
1 to 2.
Okay.
You can Zoom in, and if you get with me after the meeting, I can give you the Zoom address if you don't want to attend in person, or it's in I think Beartooth Room at Red Lodge Area Community Foundation's office.
Okay. Well,
And go
I'll
ahead.
take notes too, because my husband and I will be at the meeting.
Oh, cool. Other than that, we talked about the KSU presentation that some of you attended back in December, and action items that we took away from that. We also elected new officers in our November meeting, which we have 2 co-chairs now. We have Midge Cross and Joanne Eder, and Tara Mestel is our vice chair, and I am the secretary treasurer. And as far as go back to the KSU, we're spent a lot of time talking about some of your comments after their presentation in December, and the need for us to prioritize and come back to you all with a list of our priority areas, and also start working on developing an action plan to present to this board and to the city council as a follow-up. And then thirdly on that, the KSU will be back the end of the last week of April or the beginning of the first week of May, the first full week. So it'll be like the 30th or the 1st of April or 1st of May, or then sometime that following week, depending upon their availability. We'll have to update you later on that because we don't know yet. But we gave them a date range, and so they know they get to pick. And that'll probably be held at the Roosevelt Center like the last meeting was. And otherwise, I think that's about it. Unless Jeff can think of something I left out.
No, the only thing, I looked on the calendar today, and May 1st is on a Friday, so
Yep.
that might not be a very...
No, and yeah, I already checked with Roosevelt Center, and they're available on the 30th and the 1st, and then the next week they're available all week, so we'd be better off probably pushing into that week, so.
I heard something incidental the other day at, Business Alliance meeting where Tom Kuntz said that the fire department has gotten a grant and they had been wanting to do some, additions and renovations, and they'd gotten the grant, but he was supposed to have done the expansion, so there will probably be some moving a little bit into somebody else's space or another, same general area. I don't think
Right,
it's gonna
there's an
happen.
adjacent lot to the,
Mhm.
where their parking is, and they've been focusing on that for some time, and I think they're trying to move ahead into that, so they'll
Yeah.
take that whole half block. Oh, yeah, we kind of been planning for that.
Are you talking about the part with the Quonset hut?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it for me.
Right, thanks. Chelsea's not here for council updates, so, county update?
Yeah, so, we took into consideration from all the communication that we had about our growth policy. And we're gonna focus our next meeting just on that and then starting to work on the subdivision. And, and we did have another subdivision come in, so we're gonna have another meeting in the month so that we can get it covered and just spend some time and really dig deep into the growth policy, which I think is important from what we heard at our last meeting, so, yeah.
Good. Communication from the mayor?
Yeah, so, and I'll kind of throw in council stuff as well, since we're there. Let me find where my notes were. Most of what we did at the council was business registration related and changing some wordings around, so not really anything that impacts this body directly. What is on the agenda and continues to be is the ice rink discussion. And so what they're looking at right now is the first of what I anticipate will be at least 3 different MOUs, or basically blessings from the council to move forward. And what it is just to create a planning document, so as council tries to make a decision about which of the 2 proposed locations, either Lions Park where it currently is, or the top of Brewery Hill 78, that basically council has the information. So up to this point, there's been a lot of questions and like, what's the cost, what's the numbers, and it's not stuff that we have answers to yet because that work hasn't been done. So they're putting together as an initial MOU that gives them the ability to go look at that and kind of summarizes the challenges. And I anticipate that probably has at least a couple of passes before that'll take place. And then they'll go out and come back with the costs and their documentation. And at that point, what the next step would be that looking at the costs and trying to figure, I mean, this is a project that's in scale is literally like doing another pool. For those who were involved when we brought up the pool several years ago, it's really almost the same conversation. You know, do we put it in the same spot? Do we move it? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the costs? And while I think a lot of the community is kind of focused on the location of the where, specifically Lions Park or not Lions Park, I think a lot of the council is looking at, and I mean, it's all related, but I think they're looking at the cost. You know, what is the cost of this, and how do we maintain it, and is an appropriate piece of the budget. So that then they'll have that discussion and then say, okay, go out and get actual architectural plans for location X. And then there would be yet a third one that says, okay, that matches what the estimates were, go ahead and start building. And those, my guess is those are probably over the next year or so, you know, before all of those are taken care of. I don't anticipate, well, I could see some grading happen this year in one of the sites, but it's not gonna, you know, there's just the nature of how long those will take, so, that's there. The other thing, and it kind of ties into the URD discussion, is I have a request into the planners to make the third Mondays. It looks like that's probably gonna be okay, with the exception of the March 16th one. And I have a follow-up call scheduled, with the planners, later this week or early next week, where we've got to have, you know, several other things that we're going over. The land donation we've got for another trail up the face. So between McGillen and Brewery Hill, there's that O'Neill property. And so we've got to have documents. I don't think that's something that comes to planning board. Backing up, the one up on 78, we've already mentioned previously, you know, kind of what is planning board's input on the highest and best use for that land at the top of 78. If we use it as a park, the good news is it's already zoned as a park, with one small exception in the middle, which was spot zoned when it was put there. To undo that spot zoning would not be particularly difficult. If we look at housing, that's going to be a different, you know, a different zoning regulations, designation other than parks. So that's already on your agenda. Trying to think what else is. I think that's kind of the stuff that's there, and also blend over into the URD. So we're still trying to figure out how to address. Maybe do we shift that one meeting in March to a day that works for them? But we'll have a follow-up conversation and try to nail that down a little further.
Okay. Any questions for the mayor?
You said, that acreage on 78 and Airport Road, highest and best use, this board would be looking at that?
Well, it's a zoning regulation. Is it commercial? Is it C1, C2? Is it res, R3? Or, to me, that's goes through planning board before it makes it to council.
Yeah, but if in fact the council decides that that's the proper location for a new ice rink,
Okay.
it still comes to, well, it's already zoned park, except for the middle.
Yeah, it still comes to you guys for action. That would be one of the many steps between
Either
now
way.
and the process, yeah.
Either way.
If that land gets used for either of those two purposes, it requires action from this board.
Yeah.
I think it's C3 North zoned right now.
No,
There's one,
I mean, the little
the
part,
postage stamp is
Yeah,
C3 North.
right,
Everything around it is actually P1A.
P1A, right.
And we already had a conversation, that's basically just parks.
Mhm.
That A just means that
Airport.
it has to be a, what's the word I'm looking for, a compliant use, or basically something that's not, help me out, what is it, when you build next to
Conformity.
airports? Conforming use.
Zone conform,
It's basically something that's got to be a conforming use that doesn't interfere with the fact that there's an
I
airport
think
there.
that was Jeremy's, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention the part about Jeremy attending our,
URD.
next URD meeting.
Yeah, and so we haven't, he's got a conflict on that night, but we think it looks good after that, so we'll just have to maybe come back and figure out how to address that. My guess is we'll probably want to look at maybe shifting that one meeting that 1 week so that we can have him there, but
Yeah,
I'll pursue a little bit further, but that's just the initial feedback.
okay.
It was a very
I might have a conflict. So I'm not sure yet. My first grandchild is supposed to be born around that time, so we might be headed to Washington.
yeah, they never follow a schedule.
Yeah, we're planned to actually be gone the week of the 23rd, which is the following week from your meeting. So, but if he's early, we might be there that week. So, that's why I say it's kind of up in the air, but I can always take my laptop and do it from Washington as well. So,
We can't tell if you're in Washington or Bozeman or Helena or.
right,
Wherever.
that's what my camera is going to be on my laptop though versus my nice computer camera. So you might be able to tell the difference.
You won't look any better.
Oh.
Probably not. Probably not.
That's what I'm saying.
Backpedal.
Any other questions? John, do you have any questions for the mayor? All right, moving on, there's no new business. We have a public comment period. There'll also be another public comment period at the end of the business this evening, so there's 2 opportunities to make public comment. So I'll open it up right now for public comment. Anybody in the audience want to comment on anything on the agenda or just generally? Is there anybody online? All right, so moving on to old business. Continue the review of the 2025-26 zoning regulation update. I'll turn the meeting over to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Chair. We got through the tables last meeting, so I think we're on to the district standards. I wanted to just open it up to anybody, if there was anything that anybody wanted to talk about from the table discussion, after thinking it over, for the last few months or a few weeks, if there's anything anybody would like to discuss before we move on.
Did we finish the setback? I know, my memory says we were, still having conversation on setbacks in the C3 North area from 212. I don't know.
We talked about having a graduated setback.
Right, yeah.
So that it didn't look like a tunnel going
Yeah.
down. And I don't remember whether we're supposed to propose it or whether,
That's kind of where I'm at.
Jeremy had an idea on how we can put that together. How about that one, Jeremy?
Yeah, no, that's good, good discussion. I do recall we had that discussion. I think where we left that was probably in the district specific standards. We would outline that, rather than in the table, because that would be difficult to kind of outline in a table format what you're
Okay.
trying to do. So I think when we get to the C3N district standards, we can look at doing a setback section, or a front setback section, and kind of outline that, kind of, I guess, discuss that further and see how we want to do that. I guess I don't really have any great suggestions other than that. I think it's going to be more of just a discussion of what you guys want to see and the heights that you think are appropriate at what distance
Okay.
from the front setback, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one other question along with that, is it a council action or is this group's action as far as, are we gonna look at the back of buildings or the front of buildings? Because I know currently it is set up that they have to back onto Broadway as opposed to.
Well, that's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's not.
The
Well,
intent was never to have the back of the building facing 212. The intent was to have reverse frontage. That has been interpreted that the back of the building.
because the parking lot's on the,
Yeah,
On the back or the side,
right,
backwards.
which is why you see the sides of the building, for instance, the Family Dollar.
right.
Those are the sides of the building.
But, yeah, there's nothing, I think that was the main intent, and that just probably needs to be clarified.
When we get to that point, we need to clarify that, okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, moving right along.
Maybe in the tables, under front line setback for the C3 North and the building height, you can put variable so that there isn't a number there, a specific number anyway.
That's a good idea.
And maybe that,
Yeah.
at that point, we can refer to the page number where they can look it up.
Yeah, footnote it. Well, just for this group, I think there's also been discussion about blocking the view shed towards Rock Creek, but the reality of it is, along that portion of Broadway, there is no view shed
Well,
of Rock
it's
Creek.
not city-owned land.
Well, even where the city-owned land is, that's the park.
Too far away.
That's Coal Miner Park and the ballparks and the wild animal, you know, so, and you can't see the creek from there, so I think the setback requirement could differ on the east side versus the west side, because there is no view shed that you're obstructing on one side.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just noting that.
Well, just a historical note again, the original setback for the community entrance was 20 feet.
I remember.
And Forrest Sanderson, at that time, who was the planner, wanted to set it at 0.
I remember that, like downtown.
Yeah, and that, we had a lot of discussion, and it ended up, 10 feet ended up being the
Compromise.
The compromise, so that's why Sam's is set back 20 feet, and his addition, his building for the distillery is set back
10 feet.
10 feet.
Yeah, and then I think ProCut's building is 10 feet from,
It was existing.
It was.
that's true, it's been there for at least 20 years.
So that's, you know, just in terms of just historical perspective on what the front setbacks were. Yeah, that was kind of a long, drawn-out
Yes, it was.
discussion.
Hours.
With that, I think we could jump into the residential district standards, or the district standards section after the tables. And so basically what we did was we took the just like we did with the tables, right? We boiled this down into the language that you have in each district, but we lumped them all into one section. So you'll see for residential district standards at the top, these are applicable to all of the residential zoning districts, R1, R2, R3. So we lumped all of because most of the districts you had the same stuff, right? It was a lot of the same language as in all of the residential districts. So we're trying to simplify, right? So we don't have conflicts and end up with issues. And so this was kind of our solution, was to lump each district together into one section. And then, so the first part was the similar language that was in each district. And then the second part, we have district specific standards. These were standards that were not in each district language, but were in their own separate district sections. And so, does anybody have any issues with that concept or that layout that we've come up with for that? I think it feels pretty clean.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have any comments?
I'm kind of looking at living area F. Shall be 51% or greater of the total gross floor. What does that mean?
Well, let's just, I have comments on a lot of these sections. So let's just start at the top and we'll just work our way down, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay, so going down through this, so you'll see in relation to your comment, like for instance, B is fences and front setback. So in C3N, we could have a similar thing where we have a front setback section and we talk about and put that in district specific standards. Just want to point that out. But my first suggestion is to remove drive-through facilities prohibited, section C. That you have that in all of the residential districts, but we have it in the table. So I don't think it's really necessary here anymore. And then I think we just need to strengthen the definition in the definition section.
Okay.
So my first suggestion is just take that section out.
The drive-through, you don't want to put it in a district specific?
No, it's in the table. So in the use table up above, we have drive-through. I remember seeing drive-through facilities is in the use table, and it's not permitted in any of the residential districts. So we don't really need it down here in the standards.
Okay.
So that my suggestion is just take it out of here, because we already have it in the land use table.
Everybody okay with that?
I agree.
Yeah.
John, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Hey, and then on the next one, prevailing setback. I have some trouble with the first sentence as far as the language goes. It reads, setbacks for homes on existing lots where portions of a block have been developed shall be consistent with the existing homes as approved by the zoning administrator. I think that, to me, it leads to interpretation, and I think better language might be setbacks for new construction where portions of a block have been developed shall be in line with homes on adjacent lots. That way my only problem with this is what if you have development on adjacent lots that is different? Which one do you use? Right? So say one house is 20 feet back on one side and another house is 5 feet back on the other side. Which one do you use? Right?
Yeah, you just described R3.
Right. So to me, this
Very good.
section in general is kind of it's kind of ambiguous, and I think it's going to lead it. I believe it has led to some interpretation issues potentially. My recommendation would either change the language to say what I said, or just take this out, because you already have your setback requirements. So, a house could just needs to meet the setbacks you have. That's the standard. That's what you want. All new construction should meet that requirement.
Right.
But see, the problem is there's a lot in the middle of the block, and there's houses all over on either side. And most of those aren't 25 feet back, which is the setback. So to ask the new house to be way back here doesn't make any sense. That's why we went with prevailing setback, so that if the house on the right or left, one could be, 15 feet out or 10 feet out, you have your choice to meet one or the other, or go with the 25 feet as is your choice. But you couldn't get any closer to the road. But it would look silly to have a block where you've got everybody at 10 feet, and then this new guy has to build at 25 feet.
Yeah. Well,
And that's where we went with prevailing.
yeah, but the challenge with leaving it up to the current building inspector is, it depends on who the building inspector is. And going back a couple of building inspectors, I had a neighbor who lifted his house, and he was required to actually, as he was lifting, move the house back further to meet the then. It was crazy.
That's why we do with prevailing.
Yeah, well, so the prevailing actually on the street is, some of the houses are 5 feet, and he actually had to move the house back, and then when he wanted to put his porch back on, he was denied that opportunity because, again, so that, it depends on who's doing the interpretation, and that's, I think that's what Jeremy's trying to say, is it can get ambiguous if you're not careful.
I think he's talking about taking that ambiguity out of it.
Yeah,
And I think,
that's a good idea, but.
which is good, but yeah, I think
Good.
the issue is R3 in Old Town.
Yeah,
And the idea is, just as Sandy said, is we don't want, if you've got 5 houses on a block or 4 houses on the block and their setback is 10 feet, you don't want to require them to have
be
it
25 feet
20.
back, right.
And, vice versa, you want some uniformity within that block, and that's the intent of this section.
Could you say adjacent properties?
Well, it could be
Well,
different
and
on
that was my suggested language was, developed shall be in line with homes on adjacent lots. Again, I think that's a better language than what we have. But it's still, what if you have one house on one side that's 10 feet back and the house on the other side is 5 feet back? Which one do you
Yeah,
use?
that's
Right.
the Old Town issue.
So maybe we say adjacent lot that's the furthest back from the front lot line or something. Something like that, where So if you had that issue, you still kind of make them put it back as far as possible. So, you know, they're in line with the 10-foot, the one with the 10-foot instead of the 5-foot.
Could
You
we
know,
just
language like that.
Jerry, could we single out R3 and, you know, in Old Town and have separate rules there? Because that's really where the issue lies is the houses in Fentown, the Old Town portion. And, you know, the other challenge with R3 is there's probably a third of the homes, depending on where you're at. Well, it's not just R3, it's also over in R2, where you've got a 3-foot setback between homes existing. And the lots are so small and narrow that if you were trying to put a 6-foot setback on each side, you don't have much house left. You get a 12 wide in there, you know, so.
Well, this refers specifically to, I think, the front setback.
Yeah, I know. We also talked about side setback.
Yeah,
before.
so, I mean, we could definitely move this to the district-specific standards for, you know, R2 and R3, if that's something that you want to do. And this section right now, the way it sits, applies to all of the residential districts. So we could take it out of here and just apply this to certain districts.
What do you?
And then strengthen the language like we talked about, or we could still leave it applicable to all residential districts and just strengthen the language.
What do you guys think?
I'm fine with leaving it to the zoning administrator.
Okay.
I really am, you know, because it's obvious this house is at 10 feet,
Right.
this is at 5 feet. What would you like? You know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go with 8, you know, or I'm gonna, you know, go with 15. He would have his choice, literally from 5 feet to the front to 25 feet.
Yeah.
And
It could, I mean, yeah,
and let's look at the design, the what way you're designing the lot.
I trust our current zoning administrator.
Well, that's why we hire them.
Yeah, and.
The problem with this language is that, you know, yeah, right now it may be, you may feel good about it, but you know, what if you end up hiring a planner in 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, a staff planner, and that person just has a way different interpretation of the regulations than I do, and or even current city staff or the mayor or whoever we're having these conversations with, and you know, or Brian's not even there anymore, right? And looking at these things, and it's somebody else. And I think it's hard to be consistent with staff turnover when you have language in your regulations that are interpretive. And that's the big thing to think about with regulations. Any regulation is you want to be consistent with everybody. No matter who is reviewing it, who's staff at the time, they can be consistent across the board, regardless of who's doing the work.
What if it were an average of the prevailing setback,
Or a range, either one.
or a range, or something like that? Because you could do an average of the prevailing setback.
Okay, well, I can come up with some language to put in here.
Okay.
Maybe I could just add on to what my recommended language is setbacks for new construction where portions of a block have been developed shall be in line with homes on adjacent lots. I'll play with additional language on there that either is would you prefer an average of the setbacks for the adjacent lots, or would you prefer the setback to be set by the lot with the furthest setback? Does that make sense? I think I said that right.
Well, some of these,
Dependent.
yeah, some of these further setbacks is the house is like on the alley.
Right.
Mhm.
So we don't want to go with the furthest, for sure.
And then some of the shorter ones, they're almost on the street. And
Yeah.
You kind of like happy
That's why I was
medium.
kind of thinking of an average.
Yeah, I
you
know.
know.
We could also say, but no further back than the required setback.
something.
So, I mean, you could
Yeah.
always add that language in there that says, okay, if they're closer than the required setback, then we'll either take the furthest or the average, whatever we come up with for language, but it can't be further than the required minimum setback.
Yeah, let's look at the language.
Okay, we'll come up with some language and bring that forward. Next section is residential appearance.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think, I guess my other thought along that is a lot of these lots in town, they're already, I mean, you have basically the majority of those houses are either, you know, are setback already a set. So I guess just to remind you, the intent here is to not have a zigzag appearance in the lot, just because you have to meet this front setback. So go ahead and play with the language a little bit there. I'm not sure average is the way to go either. I think it's more a sense of looking at what's already there on that existing lot. What is the typical setback? And there's going to be exceptions to that. But if all the houses are set back 5 feet, then maybe, I mean,
Maybe 5 feet is it.
maybe 5 feet is
Because
it.
there are blocks that are.
Well, I know that.
Yeah, I know you, yeah.
I know it makes it tough to draft language to kind of account for that, but what you don't want to do is enforce a setback that just doesn't make sense for the neighborhood that it's in.
But I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, and I think as we get into appearance, you know, I think we're at some place down the road, we're gonna have people tearing down old houses and building new modern-looking structures, and I don't think that fits in with the character of that neighborhood at all. And so, setback doesn't matter either, until they kind of tie together with what, you know, so.
Go ahead. I guess we're okay with that. Anybody else have any comment on that? Go ahead, Jeremy. Next.
Okay, that leads us to the residential appearance section. This applies in or comes up a lot in all of the standards as far as appearance. But in the commercial district standards, we have the design review process. So the planning board is reviewing that design. Under residential, the planning board's not doing that review. And so it's basically left up to the zoning administrator, or I think in a lot of times is what's happening is the building inspector is reviewing this. And again, this is very subjective, right? It really depends on who is looking at that, you know, who's reviewing. Like my interpretation of a residential appearance might be completely different than Brian's, right? And so I'm struggling with the language in this section, and I'm fine if you guys want to leave it in there. And I don't really have a recommendation other than I just don't like it, and I think it should not be in here. But just because, again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of my view is from the standpoint of being consistent for legal reasons for the city, right? And that's my lens that I'm reviewing these regulations through. And this one's a tough one because it could be hard to be consistent.
So what specifically do you not like in
Well,
that section?
if you read the language, so all primary structures and ADUs, including construction of new, let's see, it says shall have architectural elements compatible with a residential appearance. That sentence I don't necessarily have a hard time with. It's more the criteria for evaluating include but are not limited to size and placement of windows and doors, building materials, and site design. That to me is very subjective. All of that. right? That whole sentence to me just screams subjective, and that's just, to me, it's hard because, like I said, my interpretation of a residential appearance is could be completely different than all of your views on that, or Brian's views on that, right? And so
Right.
it's open to interpretation on who's ever reviewing the zoning for that particular application. You talked about modern design versus traditional design that you see in Red Lodge, right? Well, one reviewer might say, well, modern design, that has all these features. It has size and placement of windows and doors. It has building materials. It's just really subjective. I think the first sentence is a little better. I think that one, just says, hey, this thing has to look like a house. It can't look like a barn, right? Or it has to have a residential appearance. That's, I think, pretty decent language. But that second sentence, I doubt, I have a tough time with that one.
How about the last sentence?
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's get in there.
I'm fine with the last sentence. Buildings resembling large storage sheds, pole barns, and other outbuildings are not allowed. I'm fine with that. Because those are very specific building types that you can review for, right? And so I think taking the middle sentence out, that criteria sentence, it would be my recommendation. And then leaving in the buildings resembling large storage sheds, pole barns, and outbuildings are not allowed. But that just is for the primary structures in ADUs, right? They can still have storage sheds, right? And those accessory structures, they just can't use those as a primary structure or an ADU.
Right.
What about site design?
See, again, I think that's just open to interpretation by who's reviewing it. And we have our setback standards, we have our building height standards, we have all those standards that, as long as they meet those, they should be okay. Like what else are we reviewing for site design on a residential lot? Like, as long as it meets setback and height requirements, then they should be good to go, right?
Is the blue sentence included currently, or is that an addition?
No, that's suggested language that I would maybe like to see added, and that's on metal storage containers. It basically is an add-on to the last sentence, and basically just metal
Right.
storage containers are not permitted to be used for primary uses, accessory uses, or ADUs. We had this issue, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
So
Yep,
I put this in there. I put this in there as kind of a to address the issue that we previously discussed or had.
Good.
All right. So what do people think about crossing out what Jeremy has recommended?
I'm in favor of it, but I think as we get down to some specific areas, we need a little additional language that it more fits with the appearance of other homes in that zoning area. Because I think it's already happening. We're getting suburban style, golf course style homes plugged down in Fentown and other older parts of the city, which they're great housing, don't get me wrong, but they're not staying with the culture or feel of the neighborhood. So,
and it's something we're gonna have more and more of unless
Yes.
we are available for change, because we've got so many older areas, and you can't just say, well, they just have to stay like they are forever, because some of them are falling down.
yep. But what do you want the replacement to look like? You know,
Yeah.
that's we
Uh-huh.
kind of have to give people an idea of future direction.
I think everybody's okay with deleting the sentence that you suggested deleting. And
Okay. And we're okay with the last sentence I added as metal storage containers are not permitted to be used for permitted uses, accessory uses, or ADUs.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Are there
Basi-
any other kind of storage
All
containers
metal
that aren't metal?
containers in the residential districts.
Can't we just
Well-
add that to the one above it, Chairman? I mean, to just, so you're not having to, I mean, just if you're doing metal storage containers, can't we just add that to like pole barns?
Yeah, I wanted to include accessory uses though. So the first two sentences apply to primary structures and ADUs, but not accessory structures. I wanted to include accessory structures with metal storage containers. So somebody doesn't try to use a metal storage container as a storage shed and call it an accessory structure.
yeah.
Unless you want to allow people to use metal storage containers for sheds.
No.
I don't, I mean,
We
there's,
have
there's
some,
also some tiny homes that look like a storage container, but they're not, you know, it's just,
yeah, I mean, we have
Don?
people currently.
Yeah, and it's
We
a
do.
question of, do you want that to continue? Do you want, it's happening more and more, you know, they're very
Oh.
popular. They're getting very popular for people to use for storage, because prefabricated buildings are getting more and more expensive. And you can actually get a storage container for a couple $1,000. And so it's becoming a very attractive option, but they are not attractive. They're ugly. So, you know, it's completely up to you guys.
he's,
I say, no storage container.
No storage containers.
Mhm. I agree.
Susan, what do you,
We're
what
in-
say you?
we're in agreement, Jeremy.
Okay.
Depends on.
Yeah.
Do we want to say something in there about the historical design or?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, when we get to R3 and R2, we can
Well, this is
Yep.
residential district.
overall, but that includes a lot of,
It includes, yeah, the golf course.
you know, I don't think you can,
So we can't put that there, but
yeah.
when we get into district specific,
So think of some of the newer stuff that's up
Oh.
on Silvergate, or Silver Circle, I mean, and picture that in
downtown.
downtown area, adjacent to downtown. Just, they're not ugly, don't get me wrong, they just don't
They're
fit the
just
character.
different. Yeah, they're just different.
Yeah, I guess later on in these notes here, I have a notation about, do we really, is it time to really separate out the, our R3 from
The golf course?
the golf course area? Because when you look at the intent and purpose of R3, it's all centered around housing in the core area, and we're getting development. We got the golf course, and you got Spires, and there's more development going out there, and the whole character between what I'm gonna refer to as Old Town
Yeah,
versus New Town,
well,
you can't really apply the same standard.
we have
You don't want to create New Town and Old Town.
we have in R, you know, in R2, we have an overlay for the high bug. And, yeah, I think that's a very part of our history we want to preserve, but I also think that Fentown in that part of R3 is an important part of our history, our character. That's where all the boarding houses from the mine are located, and,
And
they-
saunas.
yeah, I mean, all of it, just
Anyway, you might want to make note of that when we get to, the R3 section, Jeremy.
Okay. Noted.
have
All right, next. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, having the golf course be what,
It's separate.
the remaining development is R4 and the existing is R3, just doesn't make a lot of sense, so.
Okay. The next section I have highlighted, and this is more of a question for me. is living area. It says the living area shall be 51% or greater of the total gross floor area. Living area means the interior habitable area of the dwelling unit, including the basement and attics, but not including a garage or accessory building or structure where the use is primarily for storage. My question is, what is the intent of this? I'm not
There
quite
was-
understanding where this came from.
Historically, there was a huge garage built with a one-bedroom apartment upstairs. Really, they didn't even want that, but they had to do some residential. So we didn't want to see a whole bunch of lots with huge garages and little tiny living areas. So that was the intent. I know a lot
Okay.
of this is
Okay.
based on what happened, whether you take what we've got and kind of skew it around.
And it's not just one building, there's actually, in that part of town, there's multiple where,
Yeah.
like, it's an RV garage and then they live in part of it, you know, so.
Yeah, that isn't 51% of the
Right.
building.
Yeah, this.
Okay,
this kind
no,
of-
again, it was more of just a question for me on the intent of this, because I wasn't quite sure where this came from. It's the first time I've run across that language, so, no,
It ties back to that last sentence in the previous section on residential appearance. And as Sandy was saying, we started getting these pole barns basically for RV and other storage plopped down right in the middle of residential neighborhood and.
Barn dominiums.
Mhm.
Not
and-
even that.
And, the intent of that sentence in the previous section as well as this was an intent to try to get away from that being permitted within a residential area. That's the intent.
no, that makes sense. That was the only thing I had on that one. I was curious where that came from. So I think we're good with that. Okay, so now we're getting into the district specific standards. So basically what we just took was the items that you had in each district section that were specific to that district.
Before we go there, Jeremy, I had a question.
Sure.
On the district-wide, or the district-wide standards, there's a section in the old zoning 4.3.62, allowed uses, and I was kind of wondering, maybe that's what we did. We just discussed that, I guess.
Well, you said.
Yeah,
is it the-
that's the permitted land use table that you guys spent several months on. We just took all these allowed use tables from all of the districts, and we basically put it into that one big table at the beginning.
Well,
I think that what he's referring to is an accessory structure shall be allowed only when a principal use has been established on the lot. In other words, not building an ADU first
Or a pole barn first.
or a garage first.
Yeah, the man cave first, and I'm gonna get to the house someday.
oh.
Exactly.
Yeah, that, Sandy raises that point. It's the sentence that says an accessory structure shall be allowed only when the principal use or principal structure has been established.
So
Yeah.
Greg has a section highlighted that's at the beginning of section 3. That already says that. So section 4.3.25 already says that. And that requirement applies to all of the districts.
Okay.
As long as it's covered.
All right, Greg's on it.
Yeah, that was my only question. I just didn't catch that.
Nope, good question. Okay, so getting into the district specific standards. So basically so we'll start with R1. I just took the intent of that you guys had in the regulations, and I just added it into each one of these districts so that we're just consistent with the intent that you guys had for each one of these districts, and we kept it in the regulations. So I guess I don't really have anything to add to this intent. I would suggest maybe just reading through it and see if there's anything that you want to change in this intent based on the growth policy discussion that we just went through for several months, and see if there's anything there that you would like to update before we go forward.
Well, this is on for medium density housing, the R3. This is where I had a note about trying to adjust or make a distinction between R3 up at the golf course versus R3 in Old Town. And the reason that really struck me here was that second sentence. This district is intended to have a medium density overall, but allow a variety of housing types at variable densities to accommodate residents of various ages and incomes. And R3 zoning is intended to be clustered around the city center.
The golf course.
And so that to me kind of lays out what the original intent of R3 wasn't so much focused on the golf course and the area development up on the benches, but it was really intended to kind of be somewhat focused on what is Old Red Lodge, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can get into a little bit more whether the best way to address that is with an overlay or creating a different zone district. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that, Jeremy?
Not right off the top of my head. I think that's a tough one, because as a city grows and, things get zoned, they don't always, things change. So like you said, R3, the golf course stuff was zoned to R3, where the intent, clearly says it's supposed to be clustered around the city center to provide support for the city's job center, commercial businesses. Doesn't mean that you can't zone everything R3. That was just the intent when you guys did the regulations. The only thing I could say is I think there's two options. If you wanted to clean this up, you could maybe take that third sentence out. The R3 zoning district is intended to be clustered around the city center sentence, because it doesn't really apply anymore since other things are zoned R3. The other option could be to develop a separate zoning district for things outside of R3 that should be something different.
Or make them R4. But
Everybody will have fits.
What's that?
Everyone would have fits if we started renumbering all of our zoning. Maybe the overlay for Old Town is probably the best option at this point.
Yeah, that's another thing you could do, is take this sentence out and then just do a overlay, just a separate overlay district for the area that you want to do, you want to apply different standards to within R3.
Yeah, I think where we get into trouble up at the golf course is changing that is there's still a lot of unbuilt lots, and people bought those lots with
This zoning,
the zoning that exists.
and same with Spires.
And then, then you're changing it, so. But I like the idea of the overlay for Old Town.
We'll have to determine what that is.
Yeah.
And I did have a problem with the low density because it says, undeveloped fringe around the city. I think you mean city center. because it is in the city. It's not a fringe around the city, it's around the city center.
Well, while we're on it, under A, that last sentence, the only area that's R1, that's never gonna happen, so, the last sentence. It just doesn't seem to fit with R1 for what's currently zoned R1, and I don't know where we'd put additional R1.
Yeah, I would agree that last sentence of the R1 intent, is that what you're talking about? The district
Yeah.
is primarily intended to encourage master plan communities with central recreational facilities.
Which we really don't want.
Yeah, I could see it. I would recommend taking that out. That's a good catch.
You know, those are the things that are there, you just don't really see.
Is everybody okay with taking that last sentence out?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it sounds like we've got, anybody disagree with that?
Okay, I think we're good. All right, the second part of that R1, there's a sentence in there, separate from other allowed accessory uses, residential lots shall contain no more than one principal dwelling unit and one ADU guest house. My recommendation is to take that out because we already addressed that in our use tables. We already address ADUs, we already address how many dwelling units you can have on a lot, so I'm recommending just taking that out.
We talked about that, I think.
Yeah.
Last
We
meeting.
could get a bit
Yeah.
repetitive.
When we were at the tables, we talked about that, yeah.
I think we're in agreement. John, do you have anything, you okay with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay,
The same
one
thing
thing,
on
oh,
B.
go ahead, sorry.
The same thing on B, number 3, separate from other allowed accessory uses. It's the same deal. It's redundant.
Yep, I have that note as we go into R2 discussion. One thing I wanted to drop back to, under that accessory use discussion that we just had a little bit ago, Greg pointed out that 4.3.25. It's been suggested that maybe we add that accessory uses cannot be larger than the principal use or primary use or principal structure. There we go. The accessory use cannot be larger than, or accessory structures cannot be larger than the principal structure.
Yeah, I remember that we had that.
But I guess if you built a larger structure than your principal structure, then that would become your principal structure, and your initial smaller structure would be your accessory use. We don't define where on the lot the accessory has to be.
Yeah, that-
The mayor's got his hand
We've
up.
gotten in trouble with that.
That goes into
Yeah.
tax.
We got in trouble with that.
I know, I'm kidding, but
But I can see why people would want to do it that way, because if they came in, you know, they come in new to town and they see this and it's cute, and they live in it for a few years, but they've got more room on their lot and they want something bigger. I mean, that's not necessarily an evil thing or a bad-looking kind of thing. It
So
is,
what I've seen in other regulations is actually 150% of the principal structure, at least some limitation on it. So that would be basically, so if you had 1,000 square foot house, you would be able to put a 1,500 square foot shop on it.
yeah.
Or garage, or something like that. Because I could definitely see if you had a situation where you had a house in the old part of town that had a little lot, and it was only a 500 square foot house, you know, and somebody had a situation where they had enough room, they could put in a bigger structure where, you know, bigger garage or something, that might not necessarily be a bad thing.
Well, that, we're talking.
I just wanted to
separate
bring it
structures.
up. We don't have to do anything with it if you don't want to. I just wanted to bring it up that
If that second structure is actually attached to the original house, isn't that just an expansion of the original house?
correct. That is part, that just has to meet the regular setback requirements and everything in the district. So it's part of the, that's considered an addition to the principal structure. We're just
Exactly.
talking about separated accessory structures like detached garages, sheds, shops, something that's not attached.
Jeremy, when we were talking about the 51% a little bit earlier, so just to, for instance, let's say somebody wanted to build an accessory structure that was a 2-story garage, and the bottom of that structure was the garage area, and the upper portion was, you know, 1-2 bedroom apartment. How would you get to the 51%?
The upstairs would have to be 51% bigger. 1% bigger than the bottom floor that's a garage. Because I believe it says, I believe it says it can't, it doesn't include storage. So it says including, it says, but not including a garage or an accessory building
Okay.
or structure where the use is primarily for storage.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was good. All right, Jeff, you gotta.
And he got,
Go ahead.
okay, he got kind of where I was going, so I'll give you a very real example. I have the empty lot next to me.
Right.
It's currently I haven't done a boundary readjustment, so it's 2 lots. If I wanted to build a shop with guest quarters and ADU on that, and I kept it as a separate lot, that 51% currently comes into play. So if I want a 1,000-foot garage, I have to have 1,000 foot of living space to do it as well. If I end up combining the two, that 51% is based on the whole lot.
Right.
So I get a 1,400 square foot credit, so now I can have the larger shop. I can still add some living space to that, which allows it to be a little bit bigger, but now the trade I've made is that's now a single lot project. And coming back to it, it's just like, is that the intent? Because that's kind of what it's worked out as now, but it's a separate structure, but once you make it part of that lot, 51% of the lot has to be livable. That's kind of where that came in. So that's one that just comes to my mind because that was a specific conversation I had, to your point, when I bought the land and,
Right,
and
right.
kind of potential uses.
I like
So
that.
it's not 51%, it's 50%, 51% of the floor area. It's not, it's
No,
not
the floor area,
lot.
the lot though.
Both buildings.
My house would count towards the floor area, but so would the back half of the building that was mother-in-law apartment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, so if you combine the 2 lots, if you do a boundary line relocation or an aggregation to combine the 2 lots into one, then your house is the primary structure. So if you build a shop, that's an accessory structure. So then we're reviewing the accessory building as its own thing. You already
right
have
now,
your
you
living
don't-
area in your house.
Lots.
You would have to combine the lots.
Yeah, if I
Right.
combine the lots, it's not a standalone calculation anymore.
Right.
Right, exactly.
But
But
if you
that's
leave
where
them
I guess I just wanted to bring up, is there and I just posed it as a question under accessory uses, do we want to limit the size of accessory uses? This would exclude ADUs, because ADUs are different. We'll talk about ADUs. They have their own section that we'll get into later. This would be sheds, garages, shops, that sort of thing. And if you don't want to do anything with it, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up.
Well, I think that your example of a 500 square foot house and a 2,000 square foot garage is bothersome to me. So.
So, I
perhaps
mean,
we do
that's
need-
why I'm, saying something like 150%. I think like East
Yeah.
Helena, for instance, I think theirs is 150%. So if you have 1,000 square foot house, you could build a 1,500 square foot garage, right?
And that
um,
seems reasonable.
Yeah, I like that.
That seems reasonable.
'Cause we just have, especially R3, we have so many homes that are under 1,000 square feet. Not a lot of them have a lot that would accommodate that much bigger, but if you did 2 stories, that changes it, so.
Do we have anywhere in our zoning that the garage cannot be on the street side?
I don't think so.
I think that we had that discussion at some point where the house has to be on the street as opposed to putting the garage on the street and the house at the back of the lot.
Mhm.
And I remember a discussion and I don't remember that it's actually in our zoning. And is that bothersome?
If the house is on the street and the garage is on the back, you have to have a way to get to the garage.
Either from the alley
So
or
an
the
alley.
driveway,
If
yeah.
you have-
For instance, my neighbor's house has the garage on the street
Mhm.
and the house is way in the back on the alley.
Mhm.
Do we want a lot of those? It's kind of convenient for the turn-in because you have a nice wide street to get into the garage, but that means as you're driving down the street, all you're seeing are garages. I always think of it as the whole block. And so that's something that maybe we can discuss later at some point.
I mean, this would be the place where you would want to put it we can always come back and add it if you want it in all residential districts. For instance, in East Helena, the zoning in East Helena says that any accessory structures have to be located to the rear of the front of the house, the primary structure, which basically you can't have a shed or detached garage in the front yard. It can be located on the side, it can be located at the rear, but it can't be located in the front of the house. There could be exceptions to that, but that's also where the variance process comes into play too. So if somebody I've run into issues in East Helena a couple times where somebody, their house was built 80 years ago and it was built on the back of the lot instead of the front of the lot, like most houses. And all they had was front yard. And so, in that case, it was kind of an extenuating circumstance that they didn't create, in which they just went through the variance process and got approval from through that process to do that. So.
Yeah, we do have an older part of town, there were originally 2 houses, one of them's no longer there, but the remaining house is on the back of the lot, so.
I think that we
But a
need that
variance-
in there somewhere. I like what Helena did.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we can add some language in there. We'll just say accessory structures shall be located to the rear to the rear of the front of the primary structure.
Or side.
Well, that to the front,
That's wrong. Yeah.
then they could still do it on the sides of the structure or the rear, just not front, in front of the house essentially.
But if we say to the side, they could have the front of the house and the garage right there as one.
Mhm.
Right.
And so, forget the side.
Well, an attached garage is a little bit different, because an attached is an accessory. So an attached
Right.
garage is part of the primary structure. So if somebody's building a new house and they want to put they have an attached garage on the front of the structure with a driveway off the street, there's nothing really says they can't do that unless we specifically say they can't somewhere. This would only apply to detached structures.
Sure.
The golf course, of course, has exactly that, with an attached garage on the front, but Old Town does not.
There are not that many garages ever in Old Town, are there? Everybody parks on the street.
Well, the lots are 50 feet across, so
Yeah.
it's not
But,
a huge lot. By the time you lop off 6 feet on both sides,
well, that's why
you're down to 38 feet.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's why I brought up also parking, because we have parts of town that if everybody puts an ADU in, there's gonna be nowhere for people to park on the 4th of July or
Oh, like we care.
Christmas stroll, or, I mean, there already isn't anywhere to park, but
Yeah.
if you just increase the density in that part of town that much more, you know, a lot of cities, especially down in Colorado, you know, Boulder County requires, if you're gonna put an ADU in, you have to have available parking for that ADU. Since, you know, unless we go to diagonal parking on this, in front of the houses, which, as you mentioned, Sandy, a lot of people are already doing that, so.
And I'm not sure that,
We have a whole parking standard section. We'll get into parking later on, when we get to that section. We have very specific things, based on new state law that we can, on parking requirements. So, so we'll get into that when we get to the parking section. Cause
Right.
we'll have to talk about our parking standards anyways, for
Yeah.
residential dwelling units.
the hardest thing.
Okay, let's see. All right, so is everybody good with adding, Greg has it up on the screen, a section for accessory structures? All accessory structures shall be located to the rear of the front of the primary structure.
Anybody disapprove?
Mhm.
We're in agreement.
And we were also good with the 150%. Accessory structures can't be more than 150% of the primary structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
We're still thinking.
All right.
I might want to think about that a little bit more, but for now, it sounds good.
Okay, and I mean, we'll be going back through this one more time, I'm sure, before we do a public hearing. So, we can revisit it. All right, so we're on to low density urban, or the R2 district. We have the intent. So you guys want to review the intent? And did you see any changes we needed to make to that?
Hey, Jeremy,
Yeah,
time wise, we're 10 minutes too. Oh, 7:30, excuse me. Nothing.
I mean, if you guys
Bye.
want to call it early, I'm fine. I'm hungry. I'm ready for dinner, so.
Thanks, Scott.
I don't know why I had 7 o'clock, not 7:30 in my head. That's my bad. Nothing. Continue, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Are we good with that intent for R2?
I'm kind of okay with that.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
All right, and then, so I had a note on the second one. Office structures which exceed 2,000 square feet in gross floor area shall have a residential appearance criteria. Again, this is getting to that ambiguity that we talked about. And that criteria for residential appearance section, that last sentence. I think we took that second sentence out in the residential appearance up above. And maybe we address it in, maybe a residential appearance above kind of addresses this, because it says all primary structures in the previous section. It says all primary structures, which would include office structures.
Right.
So it almost feels like we don't need this in here because the residential appearance section we already have kind of addresses it.
Well, it also implies if they're less than 2,000 square feet, they don't have to have a residential appearance.
But it's in conflict with the residential appearance section because we're saying
Yeah.
all primary structures
The
in
standard.
that
Yeah.
section has to have a residential appearance. So which one
I agree.
governs? Everything else other than office structures has to have a residential appearance, but if you're a 1,500-foot office, you don't have to have a residential appearance?
Yeah, take it out.
So,
I'm not against taking that out.
Fine.
okay,
I don't hear any opposition,
okay,
and that's because we've got it covered under the general provisions, right?
Yep.
correct, yes.
Okay.
Because under that provision, we say all primary structures and ADUs.
Oh,
So, and that includes new buildings, expansions, everything. That language kind of, I feel that language covers it. Okay, we took out the last ones, the accessory uses and principal dwelling line. That's addressed in the use table. Okay, R3, that's where we were talking about that intent language. And I guess, Greg, let's just put a note on this to look at adding an overlay district for Old Town in quotation marks. And then we can kind of revisit that when we get to the overlay districts and see if that's something we want to do. Does that sound okay?
how people feel about that.
I'm
So-
good with that.
Mhm.
Yes.
That sounds good. That sounds like probably a reasonable approach, given that R3 is kind of recognized as our,
It's big,
yeah.
big. And it could get bigger.
Okay. R3.
We
so
do
going
have
up-
an overlay district for Old Town, so that's kind of a precedent.
Yeah. For a high bug.
Okay. So the second one, minimum lot size for single family dwelling, we already added these minimum lot sizes to the lot standards table. So we don't need that, so I took that out. And then I also removed a maximum of 4 dwelling units are permitted in a single structure.
Again, repetitive.
What's that?
Again, it's redundant.
Yep.
We've already covered.
Mhm.
And then last section was basically same section as above, office structures exceeding 2,000 square feet, residential appearance. So we'll take that out too.
Yep.
Because that's addressed above in the general standards. Okay, we're on to R4. The intent. You guys have any issues with the language in the intent?
Anybody have anything about that?
Nope.
I think we're okay.
Okay, well, we're moving right along.
We're gonna take out the criteria.
Yep, so the next 2 sections will just come out similar to the last sections, since we have the lot standards table, and then again, that residential appearance stuff is addressed in the general standards. All right, well, that takes us through the residential district standards. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about the residential standards? Or are we good to move on to our commercial district standards?
I think we're good to move on.
Okay. All right, same thing in the commercial district standards. These might be a little bit longer because there's obviously a little bit more standards in the commercial districts that we need to go through that you have. So we'll start with the general district standards that apply to all the districts. This is where we can add in the discussion on the setbacks when we get down to our C3N. We can add we can add a section on the setbacks, when we get that far. I don't know if we'll make it that far tonight, but, if we do, we can start that discussion. So the first one is screening. I had just a few edits. The language service areas associated with non-residential uses. I took that out, and I recommending putting in ground mechanical equipment, dumpsters, loading and unloading areas, and parking lots larger than 4 parking spaces shall be screened. So
You're not worried about dumpsters?
I felt the loading and unloading areas kind of covered the service areas associated with non-residential uses. My concern is what is classified as a service area? You know, how is that defined? Who, you know, what's the interpretation of a regulator or a reviewer of service area, right? So I'm trying to be more specific as to what we want to screen. And these apply to all the commercial districts. So keep that in mind. These are the general district standards that apply to all the commercial districts.
But
And this is,
I like the idea and principle, Jeremy, of what you said, but the challenge is, I mean, you drive down the alleys on either side of Broadway, there's no screening for parking, there's no screening for dumpsters, none of this has happened. And, yeah, I don't see any way to go retroactive, and I don't know how you would do it without, you know, require new business without it looking just weird. You know, then you get the zigzag appearance off the alley, and it's not visible. I mean, the people living on the other side of the alley, the residential homes, most of them have put screening on the back side of their lot, so they don't have to
screened
look.
their lot.
Yeah, so they don't have to look at it. But yeah, I can't think of anywhere going down the back side of Broadway on either side of Broadway that there is screening for parking, screening for dumpsters, screening for HVAC or whatever mechanical they have back there. And that's just me. I mean, I thought it was kind of weird when we did the review on the addition to Black Canyon Bistro, that they were gonna have to screen their dumpster when, you know, right next door the dumpster's not screened. So,
well, we could accept
Access.
C4. We could do an exception for development within the C4 district.
yeah, because we already have an overlay there. So that's a good point. What do you guys think?
This is basically a commercial entity that backs up to a residential property.
Right.
Or an alley.
A residential
Well, they're
property.
residential on the
It
other.
could be a
On the other
commercial on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
I don't think that we'd have a problem with C3 North
Mhm.
because it really doesn't overall back up to residential properties. C3 South is kind of a different thing, but there aren't alleys there
Mhm.
for the majority of it. So it's really talking about our downtown residential areas. I always thought it was weird that we were supposed to screen dumpsters. It doesn't make sense, and then the trash company, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're Family Dollar, I can understand that, and, you know, outside of downtown, but there's just not a lot of room for screening. And if you start screening parking lots, I mean, where the parking lot across the street from the Pollard, I can understand that. But for the places behind, like behind Red Lodge Cafe and whatnot, that have just a couple spots back there, or back behind coffee roasters, and the stuff off the side street, there's a parking lot back there. You can't screen it because then you can't access it. So,
Yeah, that's the real problem. You can't
Yeah.
access
Right,
the parking area.
right. So maybe we need to exclude the downtown overlay.
Maybe this should be district-specific standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, if you want to apply it to all the districts except for, say, C4, then, you know, we can just accept C4. That way we're not repeating this in all the other districts. I'm just trying to simplify as much as we can. And not, repeat things throughout if we don't have to.
I'm not sure we need it at all.
Well, what I like about this, though, is that first part that Jeremy's added.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets back to our earlier conversation about the Family Dollar putting their mechanicals on this facing the street.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the distillery.
Yeah.
That reverse frontage thing basically put all that mechanical equipment up facing the street, and we didn't have, well, actually, I think we had recommended that they screen those with vegetation, but they haven't done it yet.
What?
But so I think there's an application for it, at least in the community entrance.
No, I fully agree. I just think C1 and C4, the downtown along Broadway, that just doesn't make a lot of sense, and they're small lots, but everywhere else, C3 North, you bet, even C2, it's kind of the areas that are undeveloped. The areas that are already developed, it's kind of hard to visualize, so.
Okay, so C1, it looks like the majority of it is along Broadway up to 19th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the townhomes are going in, they're across from the gas station. If the townhomes were already there and the gas station went in, would we require them to fence it on the side of the street?
That's C3
Not
South.
C1, 19th Street.
Yeah, C1, I'm sorry, but the gas station's further.
Oh, yeah,
Further down.
actually, the gas station is further. This
Yeah.
is across from 19th Street. So there used to be a glass. Remember, that's where
Yeah,
Red
that's where
Lobster Glass
Chelsea's
used
office.
to be, and
Yeah, Chelsea's office.
those types of things. And it's obviously a mix of residential.
Well, in the Lupines, they're
On the back side.
on the backside.
I don't know, I don't see fencing it. Maybe the vegetation I don't have a problem with. Kind of creating a little bit of a barrier,
Yeah,
but not a 6-foot fence.
no.
It doesn't make any sense.
So we could revise that to say, adjoining residential uses we could take out opaque wall and or fence at least 6 feet in height and just say vegetation, let's say a vegetative screen, solid vegetative screen at least 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall? What are you thinking?
I don't know, that still doesn't work in C1 and C4, so.
Well, C4 we can exempt, like C4 we can
Right.
exempt from standard.
Yeah.
C1, we could include C1 as an exemption too, if you want.
But I think if we exempt those two, I'm fine with screening for everybody else. And it could even be a fence, because nobody wants to look at the warehouse part of the tap room that, nobody wants to look at their HVAC equipment or what have you on the.
Well, the
On the
intent
Broadway
here
side.
is basically, wouldn't it be the street side of?
No, it's towards the other residential areas, and there aren't any residential areas out there, so.
Yeah, the intent is if there's, if a building's going in, or even a multifamily housing unit, right? Or something like, we just had this on the conditional use permit you guys reviewed last fall, right? Where we required screening, because they had a residential use to the one side of the lot. And we required screening of they had a parking area proposed off the alley. And we required them to put a fence in on the end of that parking area to screen that parking lot or that parking area from the adjacent residential lot. So, that's a perfect example, right? Is that situation.
So we're talking about exempting C1 and C4?
Yep, in this section.
Well, it wouldn't be in this section at all. It would end up going into the specific, district specific.
Oh, sure.
Well, no, it would stay in here. We would just put a sentence at the end, like Greg just put up. We would just exempt C1 and C4 from that standard.
How's that sound?
I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you took out the fence? I can't read it because it's blue.
No, we haven't taken out the fence yet because we didn't finish that conversation. Is that?
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not fond of a 6-foot fence at all.
Could we make it an or vegetation?
It says along with vegetation.
I know,
which
just make,
means nothing.
right.
How about a
So what-
vegetation?
What if we say opaque wall or, let's see, opaque wall, comma, fence at least 6 feet in height, comma, or
Or
Right.
permanent vegetation at least. Do we want to specify a height, 4 or 5 feet?
Yeah.
I would say 5 feet.
Okay, permanent vegetation at least 5 feet in height. Or a minimum of 5 feet in height, maybe.
Yeah. Like that.
It gives them some options.
Are we all happy?
I'm not sure I picked up on everything. Are we defining, the end of the parking lot? If it goes on to an alley, it doesn't count, but there's a house on the other side of the alley?
That's adjacent to residential.
Okay,
So we would require
so
that.
you're adjacent to the alley, but not the residential beyond the alley?
I think
Well-
it depends. I think it depends on how the parking is designed. Because like that one we reviewed last year for that multifamily housing unit, the parking was pull-in parking off the alley. So that was their access, was the alley, essentially was their driveway. So you can't put a fence along the alley because then they can't access the parking. So
Right.
So I think it somewhat depends on, but I think in certain cases, if they had a parking lot, you could, with one driveway access off of the street or an alley to get into the parking lot, then I think you could require, the section that's not a driveway be fenced or screened. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, I work in a little store that backs up onto a itty bitty parking lot, which is adjacent to an alley. And on the other side of the alley, you've got the backyards of houses that face Platt. And some of them have a driveway to the side of their house, and they come around and they go into their garage from the back without touching the alley necessarily.
Right.
Sometimes they can, it depends on the house. But this whole section, and we've got, you go over to Pollard and you get in one of those alleys and you keep going, or you go this way and you're still on the alleys. We're talking not very many parking places, and we're talking not necessarily in use 24 hours a day. And to put all these other things in, it's going to cost somebody some money. And it's a matter of, do we want to make all your stores, put things in that are gonna decrease the amount of, money that goes into the city's coffers
Sure.
or, you know, all that stuff. And I know I can only give an example for the place where we are, but there are 2 stores facing three that face Broadway that share a parking lot out back. And if you count your spaces, you could count them for all 3 businesses that are there. But on the other hand, depending on how long these different businesses are open, you could have people from this building using the parking places for that building if they knew that those people weren't open at night.
Mhm.
I don't know, it just seems like it's a little bit too complicated, or that there may be another way to describe it where it wouldn't really matter.
But see, what you're talking about, those are separate lots. And so we're talking about one parcel with more than 4 parking spots. So none of that would apply.
Well, you can't even define how many parking spots we have.
Especially on Broadway. But
Yeah.
that's kind of why we also want to.
That's why we wanted to exclude it.
We're going to
Mhm.
exclude those from this consideration.
Yeah.
So they won't have to put any screening in.
Okay, because I've noticed, like the one that's closest to ours, backing up on, up until about a year ago, they didn't have any kind of fence in back. And eventually, they put their own little fence that'll open and close,
Mhm.
that is, you know, maybe 4 feet high or something.
Yeah, 42 inches.
Yeah, pretty much, you got it. I know what business you're in, right?
Well, I think we're excluding
Yeah.
Broadway.
Yeah, well,
C4 and
Mhm.
C1 from this section.
that's good.
Because we have to recognize that.
Mhm.
And not only that, but it's more than 4 parking spaces.
Over 3 lots, depending on who's there on any given day, you can't really tell where one lot is, because they all run one
They
to
know.
the next, right?
They
Can we
won't
move
have to.
on?
Yes.
Okay,
Building orientation.
yeah, so this is what Jeff was talking about, I think, when we were talking about building orientation earlier. Primary building facades and entries shall face the adjacent primary street or avenue, not the secondary or side street in the case of a corner lot. Is that
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
we're
this
talking about?
Yeah, this was in relationship to C3 and C3 South, where we talk about have reverse frontage as the specification, and the misunderstanding out of that was that basically you would turn the building 180 degrees so that the front was basically facing the back, the parking lot that was in back, and the back of the building was facing the street. And the intent, that was not the intent. The intent was just to have the parking behind the building on the back side of the lot rather than the street facing.
Street side, right.
Street side.
Well, and, you know, if you're, let's just say the tap room, because that's one that we all kind of know what it looks like. If the primary entrance was on the front, you're adding long distance to travel from the parking
Parking area.
to that. But, I mean, it needs to look, I mean, you brought it up with the apartments up off of, Silver Circle.
My intent here, and what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean that the primary entrance, but, I mean, basically, you can have two primary entrances.
Yes, yeah.
And I've seen this in Billings where
Yep.
they have this, what basically reverse frontage is, you know, and this gets back to the pedestrian-friendly kind of thing that we've been talking about, is that if you're promoting walkability, you've got people that are walking down the street want to enter the building from the street side, right?
That's right.
If you're driving,
Yeah, be in the back.
you
Right.
want to have the entrance in the back. So I don't, in the case of, I guess, when we're looking at this in terms of, I don't see any conflict with this, Jeremy, and saying the primary building facade, and entrance shall face the adjacent primary street. I think that's okay. It's just when we, get to C3, and S, that we kind of clarify that with our reverse frontage, or we want to say that we, in the community entrances, we don't want parking lots facing the street side.
Well, here's the issue. Family Dollar, okay? They have the parking lot on the side and in the rear, and we were okay with that. But their primary entrance is actually on the side
On the
street.
side street. Yep.
And I don't have a problem with that as long as what's along Broadway is attractive, which is one reason why we made them,
But they had windows.
put in fake windows.
Yes,
The same thing with Town Pump.
yeah.
So when this says that the primary entrance has to be on Broadway, I don't, that sounds problematic to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't followed it. Not so much for Town Pump, but I know Family Dollar was probably under this rule.
But is that a variance
No,
Well,
issue or just?
well, don't we also say, though, that if there's a side street, right?
it says that primary building facade and entrance shall face the adjacent primary street,
Or avenue,
not the secondary. So how do you determine what the secondary street? To me, it would be the side street and Broadway would be the main drag. To me,
Correct.
this is confusing.
Yeah, Broadway, and that, in your example, Broadway is the highway is the primary street.
The primary,
And the side, the streets that take you back to the next block over, those are side streets.
Robinson.
And so in the case of a corner lot, this is saying that the building has to face Broadway or, the highway or that primary street. It cannot face the side street.
Robinson.
Now, in the case of Family Dollar or any of the other ones, that might have been something you reviewed with the conditional use permit or design review or something like that. I don't know the history with those, so I can't say how those were reviewed, but that might have been an exception that was made with those based on, the design review process or whatever. I don't know, but
It didn't come
to me,
up.
this is very specific.
It didn't come up.
Yeah, to me, this is
didn't come
very
up.
specific that you cannot, it has to face that primary street. So any structure would have to face that primary street. Now, we could,
And that's really awkward.
Yeah, that's good.
It's
go
really-
ahead, Jeremy.
I could try to think of some language to maybe allow us to do some exceptions. I guess, that's also what the variance process is for, right? So if somebody wanted to vary from this standard, they could request a variance, and if they provide justification for that variance to the Board of Adjustment, then that could be justified and approved. That's what the variance process is for, right? So if there's a specific reason based on lot orientation or topography or, some concern over access or whatever, they could request a variance from this. That's what the variance process is intended for, is those exceptions that, that those unique situations in which a standard can't be met.
I've been on this board a long time, and I don't think we've ever granted a variance, because the variance is only in the case of, what was the term, Jeff?
Whether it's There
You
were
can't do anything with it.
four,
Yeah.
four conditions that have to be met for variance.
Yeah,
One of
it's
them- one
really
of them-
strict.
One of them is hardship. I can't remember
Hardship.
what the other three were.
That's what I was thinking too. So, and I don't wanna create something that's gonna create a variance every time we see it. And if you think of this, even if you think in a Family Dollar or, Town Pump, if you have the entry on Broadway, then people are gonna park and have to walk around the building. That is not the way they design buildings these days, and I think that every single architect will say, huh? No, that's just really weird. And if the parking is all in the back, they have to walk around the building to get to the front, that doesn't make sense either.
Well, no, in C3 North, we talked about doing a combination of, say storefronts, I'm using that term loosely, it could be professional offices.
Right.
And those are all have doors facing Broadway.
And the
Then
parking
people
is
all
where?
have to park behind, and that, I guess, if I were gonna build that as a developer, I would go, huh? Because that's gonna make it harder for me to lease that space or sell that space.
Because people wanna park in front of the door.
Yeah,
You go
especially
anywhere,
wintertime,
people try to park in front of the entrance door.
yeah.
And since we're not putting parking in front on Broadway, then we shouldn't require the entrances to be on Broadway.
I think what we desire is we desire an attractive facade facing
Exactly,
Broadway.
yes.
And I'm not that creative. I don't know how you get there, but that's what our intent and desire is. It's, I think, even more so than the entrance being on facing Broadway.
A good
What if,
a good example is the Benno building that's new.
Yes,
That was, so there you have parking on the side and in the back, but you also have an entrance in the back and you
Right.
have the entrance on the front on Broadway.
the dental offices, you only enter from the back. You
No,
don't enter from the sides,
You can enter from the,
You can enter from the front,
can you?
yeah.
next
I guess
to
I never have, because I park near the
next
door.
to the title company.
I always walk, so
but
I,
that's the example.
That one did well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the example probably of
yes,
what our growth policy is striving for our community entrances in terms of being attractive and similar in
yeah.
design to the historic character of Red Lodge.
But if we make them pedestrian and bike friendly, that changes a lot too, because more people will want to access them that way.
Yeah, and if you limit your ingress and egress where Broadway is concerned, once you get out of Central Business District, that makes it make more sense when you get down to Family Dollar and St. Vincent's, because you have one street that goes out, one turn coming from Broadway, and then it goes to two different buildings. And further down, we spread them out further. So that takes care of it a little bit, the fact that you have a limitation on how many turns you can create that go in and out of the highway.
Mm-hmm. Well, going back to what the proposal, what KSU proposed, actually were more cross streets, which actually even increases possibilities for access to the rear and not have driveways right out onto Broadway, so.
Well, we've got 7:25, so Jeremy kind of left this section B hanging a little bit. Do you have some, given our discussion, do you have some thoughts on how to modify it, or?
Yeah, why don't Greg and I, we'll come up with some language that we think might clean this up a little bit and have that ready for the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for all your efforts.
So we'll start building orientation at next meeting, and look at what Jeremy and Greg can put together.
And come up with.
Don, do you have any thoughts? On the discussion, didn't hear anything.
No, I'm good.
All right. So, let's see, public comment, any public comment?
No comment online, Mr. Chairman.
How about in the room? So written correspondence, staff communication?
What convenient timing. Greg, do you want to introduce this young man?
Yeah, so this is Connor Brooks from our Billings office. This is Connor from our Billings office. He's gonna be taking over the staff position here. I'll be moving to Kalispell, so.
Oh,
Connor's gonna be the new guy, and he's gonna work with Jeremy and kind of keep things plugging along. I'll be here through end of March-ish.
What's
All
your
right.
last name?
Brooks.
Brooke?
End of March, I thought it was June or July. So I plan on having the city administrator on board before we need him, but maybe not if it's the end of March, so. We may have to utilize you a little bit, so. Really fun.
All right, well, welcome.
Thank you. You talked about stuff in the channel already up front, or is that?
I won't be able to attend the next meeting. I have another engagement I have to be at that day. I'll be out of town on the road. So, but Greg will attend for me in my place and, run you through the next sections.
All right. Sounds good.
And then I think, just an update on things coming up. We do have a design review that was submitted for garage structure. And I can't remember the address off the top of my head. Maybe Greg, you remember the address, but it's just off Broadway, behind the accounting office, if I'm recalling.
424.
424 Broadway. Anyway, that should be coming to you in March. Either the first meeting in March or the second meeting in March.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
For design review, no CUP, just design review on that. And then I just wanted to let you know that the Spire subdivision has submitted a subdivision application to the city. That was submitted last Friday with the fee received on Monday, I believe. So we have started our staff review for completeness and sufficiency. We will get a completeness letter out to those guys. We have a few comments that are going to get sent to them, but we have some completeness comments. But anyway, that's a ways down the road before you guys probably see that. I'm thinking schedule wise, it's likely to come to you in June for a public hearing, potentially. But that depends a lot on our comments and back and forth with the applicant on sufficiency and completeness items. So that could spill into July potentially, but right now we're thinking maybe June for a public hearing.
And when do you think the design review will come up?
Either the first meeting in March or the second meeting in March. Greg is working on the completeness review of the application right now. As soon as he gets that done, then we should be able to schedule that for the March meeting, one of the March meetings.
Okay.
All right. Anything else from anybody? All right. Thanks, Jeremy. See
All right,
you, John.
thanks everyone. Bye.
Good night.